Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk about issue number 17 of X-Men Red, written by Al Ewing, but before we get started with the story, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel if you find anything interesting within the comics covered here, for with your help, this channel can grow and improve. So with that said, this issue opens with none other than Vulcan flying high in all his power. And while he was flying, he asked one simple question, and that is, will he be the new Horseman of Death? So with that question asked, Revelations responds by saying no, not on any level, because in times past, he ordained his chosen warriors with the names of those he had lost, and wrote their names in blood in the sacred texts of humankind. But now is the time for older concepts. Now Revelation then goes on to say how if his family had understood his path, this would be a simple matter, but it is happening as it must, it is happening now. And he does not need a new death, rather he just needs fire to be fire. But see, fire is only useful when harnessed. So Revelation made sure to bind Vulcan to his will, to ensure compliance. Because through compliance Revelation could teach Vulcan a bit of restraint in the process. So with Vulcan under Revelation's control, Revelation makes sure to point out how he was able to tear through Vulcan's prison with his bare hands with ease, the same prison that Vulcan couldn't even touch. So with the cage being no real challenge for him, he goes ahead and brings up how Mysterium was brought into this plane as a Coinbase metal, imprinted to the material world and its material laws, despite its power of anti-magic. But if it was up to Revelations, it would be made into a holy sword. Anyway, following that, Shiro asked who would play the parts of the four elements, because, by his count, Vulcan is the fire, which means Storm could be air. But see, that's when Revelations corrects him by saying Storm isn't a mere ingredient, but rather she is the magic itself, for she is all four elements. So with that out there, we transition over to the coast of the barren Autumn continent, which was once home to the Autumn Palace. And let's just say, Storm's forces at this point in the story are just waiting for the end. Because the fighting retreat from Port Prometheus had gone hard and the Western Front was lost quickly to demons, which allowed Genesis's forces to sweep across the land. And while all that was going on, the White Sword took his army east into the Morrowlands where no one could resist them for long, so eventually they were forced to abandon their lands. Now all of this had huge consequences for the mutants from Earth, because the lucky ones were taken to Shi'ar space by the human allies which was led by Craig, but the unlucky ones were captured and enslaved. But see, that is not to say the mutants of Earth went down without a fight, because those who were more attuned to this new world fought alongside the rebels against Genesis's forces. So with all Storm's forces being pushed back to this last point, Genesis hid in safety on Arakko Prime and readied her forces for their final assault, because her troops would soon be at Storm's last camp, once they crossed the Sabuna Sea. So with all the pieces in place, Storm still had a very important choice to make, and that was to use or not to use the Uranos trigger because the clock was ticking. So while Storm deliberates, Uranos continues the communication within Storm's head, because whatever decision she makes will ultimately end in a massacre, and it will all fall on her shoulders. So with all that pressure on Storm, John Ironfire calls out for the trigger despite knowing the consequences of using it. Because John Ironfire knows more than most about what would happen if he used Uranos, because his friends, the 100, marches under Genesis's banner by force, which means they too would be destroyed. Now, in John's eyes, everyone under her control is beyond saving, because he brings up all the times they tried to convince Sabuna, Calderek, and Pollux they are fighting on the wrong side, just to be turned down. And unfortunately, if they keep their current pattern, then Genesis's grip on the world will tighten until there is nothing left. So with the odds stacked against them, Ironfire just wants to end the war by any means necessary, even if it requires killing those he loves, and if Storm is not strong enough to do it, then he would take it upon himself to carry out the deed. So with the tension building, Storm breaks the anticipation with the crackling of thunder, because in one well-placed strike, the trigger went up in smoke. So with her choice made, Uranos' voice faded into nothingness with a single warning saying, he hopes she doesn't regret her decision. Now with the trigger in flames, Storm hands the remains over to a shocked John Ironfire, because she was not about to conduct a genocide if she could help it. So with the trigger gone, John lashes out by saying, that was the end of the war, that was victory, it was mercy, it was the innocents under Annihilation's spell, or all the innocents here. Because Genesis is coming and he isn't sure that Storm knows who she is, because John is fully aware of what she is willing to do. Because John lived alongside her in the paradise of arts and freedom and love, and she feared it. And even when the 100 fought to make Okara whole again, Genesis just fought to break it further apart. So if Storm for some reason thinks Annihilation is using her somehow, then she is wrong, because it is Genesis who is using the Annihilation. And using it she is, because as we all know, Genesis is planting her whispers into the minds of anyone she thinks is useful, no matter what they believed before. So with that out there, Storm barked back by saying, "And how is that different from John's general, the White Sword, because once the White Sword commanded John just the same." But see, that is where John corrects Storm by saying, he wasn't beholden to a whim, he was conscripted into an army, because the White Sword never demanded more from them than the mission, and he never asked to be worshipped as well. So with their conversation coming to an end, John turned his back on Storm and exited the area, but not before saying that when the mission was done, he gave him an honorable discharge and ended his service, and now it is his turn to end the White Swords. So with John securing safe passage to the mainland with Sizia help, we jump back to Storm asking Roberto about Nova. And according to Roberto, the Nova force is keeping Nova alive and the infection at bay. And as for the pain, the telepaths ensure them that the pain receptors are cut off for now, so he feels nothing at the moment. But with that said, Roberto kept telling himself that he couldn't have known about the horsemen, about pestilence, and about how Nova would react to an arrow hitting Storm's way. But one thing Roberto does know is Nova didn't take the arrow so Storm could press some kill switch that could kill millions of mutants. So with that said, Revelations appeared on the scene, and with low whispers, the mutants parted ways and allowed Revelations to pass untouched. So as he walked alone to Storm, Roberto, suspecting a fight, activated his ability only for Storm to stop him in his tracks. Because she points out how Revelation came alone and unarmed, which means there's a large possibility that he is just there to deliver a message. So as Revelation walked closer, he was stopped by Death, and upon seeing his son, Revelation stated that Death had chosen a side, and because of that he was impressed by his choice. But that is when Death breaks the news that he was also responsible for killing his sister Pestilences, and when he asks his father if he cares, Revelation only responds by saying life teaches, and to continue his lessons. So with that interaction completed, Revelation approached Storm and said he would not stand against Genesis, but neither would he stand alongside her, because he believes this world needs and deserves more than she offers, because this world needs Storm's magic. This world needs Storm. So following that, we transition over to the Morrowlands, where the White Sword just completed his assault on a small colony. And while there, the White Sword has a small exchange with one of his 100 by saying, after Genesis is done with his sword, she will return it back to his hand. But just as he was saying that, John Ironfire interrupts their conversation and says how Genesis will never let it go. Because to her, the blade is now a trophy and a symbol of her power, and because of that, she will never give it up. Now, due to the effects of the Annihilation, White Sword seems to be completely subservient to Genesis, so much so that he didn't even care if he ever got his blade back. In fact, he even goes as far as to say, she is his queen and he is her general, so there is no need for him to question her. And as for his longtime friend, the White Sword offered to give John a quick death, due to him once being one of his 99. So with the fight on, John quickly started to cut down his brothers, one at a time. So with 4 down, the White Sword ordered 10 more to battle, and with no hesitation, John accepted the challenge and continued the fight. So with John facing the 100 on his own, we jump over to Storm and Revelation making their way over to the spell circle. And while they walked, Revelation points out that Storm chooses to keep Uranos in his cage. In which Storm responded by saying Uranos offered the illusion of having clean hands, the lie that she can summon evil and not claim it. But see, when it comes to Storm, she believes the blood on her hands should belong to her. So with that said, Revelation offers a different choice, but no illusions. For the forces of Genesis are coming for people, perhaps even now. So because of that, Storm then decides to then trust her people, much like how she currently trusts Revelations. But see, in the past, Revelation once trusted his own children to one day stand at the 4 points of this X, but they have not learned what they needed to learn, and the only one that shows any promise is Death. Especially because Pestilence is lost, and the rest are not suitable, so he must work with those whom fate has provided. One of which is Shiro combined with Redroot, because after the events in Otherworld, Shiro became the land in which Redroot grows on. Because if she were to be removed, then Shiro would die. So following that, everyone takes their positions on the 4 points of the X, with revelations representing water, the familiar, with it quick wit and hunger for knowledge will representing air, and as for an upset Vulcan, he would play the role of fire, and finally Shiro would play the role of earth due to his connection with Redroot. And in the center of them all is the one and only Storm. So with our goddess placed dead center, Storm asked what kind of magic they were conducting, in which Revelation states Genesis's first act in this war was to return what had seemed dead, the living island of Arakko. So to win this war, Storm must answer that act with something similar. And the way to do that is to use mutant magic. Which means, they must let the fire be fire, let the air be free, let the earth support the people, and let the water bring us together, because Storm is the weather that plays on the breeze and the fall of the rain, for she is Storm, and Storm is the breath of life. Just like the breath of life is her, and as she lives, so does the land. Now let the living land be born. So with a massive surge of energy, Storm erupts with power. But before we could see the outcome, we skipped over to Arakko Prime with Genesis talking to Sabuna. She tells him that the rebellion has been put down and the weak once again live under the strong and our gracious protection. So once the ringleaders on the barren island have paid the price, they will sequester ourselves in the 10 towers and let our greater enemy lay siege. That way, the humans will come to them, to their red slaughter. And on top of that, Genesis won't let pride force her to give up that advantage. But regardless of her plans, Sabuna noticed something strange, something big coming their direction in the water. It was so big that even Sabuna could feel it displacing the oceans, because across the world, only a small archipelago remains of the Autumn continent, because the rest is here and walking like a mutant because Karak is here and ready to fight. And let me just say, this is freaking awesome to see the nation truly ready to defend itself. And at the forefront, Storm led the charge saying, "You claim to speak for your Arakko, then raise your island and fight." So with that said, issue number 17 of X-Men Red comes to an end. Now this issue was amazing, and as for the ending, I did not expect that to happen. Because in the next issue, it is gearing up to be either A kaiju fight, or B, a beat down, but either way, I'm here for it. And as for Revelation's reintroduction, it was a bit underwhelming but still served a major role in giving Arakko a fighting chance. And as for the destruction of the Uranos trigger, I think that was a waste of a good plot point that could be saved for a later story. Because a weapon like that could be considered a nuclear option for the mutants against an unforeseen threat. But anyway, down in the comment section below let me your thoughts about this issue and what predictions you could have moving forward. So with that established, I hope you enjoyed this video, and please don't forget to leave a like and a comment if you want to see more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.